Have you ever asked yourself why the last days are the last days? What makes them so? Might it have something to do with Christ bringing the spiritual nature of the law to light 2,000 years ago, thereby bringing the old and new covenants together, exemplifying the nature of the law of the covenant giver, which is love? And what is the purpose of the last days? As mentioned before, I believe it's resurrection, but it might be better to say harvest, the final stage of resurrection. After all, when you sow seed, you do so in order to eventually reap a harvest, right? Nonetheless, resurrection as a whole is key. I cannot emphasize enough that sowing and reaping on both the natural and spiritual planes is resurrection, and so the lampstand and its representation of the three great feasts of Israel incorporates this principle and understanding from top to bottom, beginning to end. Resurrection is the core essence of the gospel of Christ. Without the truth of this principle, our faith is in vain and we are false witnesses of God. Now, let's return to the illustration of the lampstand and discuss some other aspects of the last days, beginning with the title, 3 Days and 3 Nights, which is from Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Almost everyone sees this passage as relating to the 3 days and nights that Christ was in the tomb before his resurrection. This is true, but I believe there's something more to this as indicated by the illustration. Note that Jesus referred to himself as Son of Man, connecting the 3 days and nights to his coming as Son of Man. Note the divisions on the right side of the lampstand, showing the 3 branches or days and spaces or nights, beginning with the central branch or day of Pentecost and ending with the 7th and final branch or day or Feast of Tabernacles proper. When viewed this way, we have 3 days and nights, incorporating the day and night of Pentecost, the day and night of trumpets, the day and night of atonement, ending with the 7th day, or again, Feast of Tabernacles proper. Now, look at John 2:19. Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Again, most believe this refers to the Lord's time in the tomb before his resurrection, but consider what John recorded just a few verses later. But he was speaking of the temple of his body. No doubt, the Lord's own body is his temple, but is it not also true that we, his people, are also his body and temple? And what did Jesus say to the Jews? Destroy this temple. Might this suggest the falling away of the church due to the intense persecution taking place in the days of Christ and the apostles? Might this correspond to Matthew 24:1 and 2? John 2:19 leads to the following statement made by none other than John himself. Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. Have you ever noticed this passage before or ever wondered what John meant by the last hour? Evidently, he was referring to his own time and not to something far in the future, as some suppose. My take is this. When we see the last days as the spiritual fulfillment of the feast, beginning with Pentecost, then the last hour to which John refers pertains to the day of Pentecost. This was the last hour of this day, which progressed into the night of the same, correlating with the falling away of the church. What helps support this view is that in conjunction with the falling away, Paul refers to the man of sin and son of perdition in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. I don't believe this is an individual of any sort, but denotes the spirit of Antichrist corresponding to John's remarks about the last hour. When we consider 2 Thessalonians 2:4, we have an accurate description of the spirit of Antichrist, which is the inward essence of pride that seeks to exalt itself in this temple which we are. While so many look for an outward manifestation of some individual rising up, the spirit of pride succeeded long ago in establishing itself in the midst of his people. Like a perfect example of the man of sin and son of perdition, then read Matthew chapter 23 and compare it to what we see today. Might the physical destruction of the temple of God in 70 AD reflect a spiritual desolation of the temple of God that followed? As the illustration shows, the 3 days needed to raise the temple again coincide with the spiritual fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles, incorporating the Day of Trumpets, Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles proper, all within the scope of the last days. The temple being raised is people, not a physical structure of sorts. I believe any reference to a literal brick or stone temple is quite misleading. In summary, the 3 days and 3 nights of Matthew 12:40 begin with the day of Pentecost and end at the Feast of Tabernacles, while the 3 days of John 2:19 begin with the day of trumpets and ends with the same feast. The difference is simply the starting point. All of this brings us back to the understanding that the 3 feasts of Israel are a picture of the resurrection process working in the midst of his people, not a future event, but a present reality. As we have considered, the day of Pentecost went into the night of the same in John's day, many antichrists rising then and continuing to do so up to this present time. I emphasize, Antichrist is the spirit of pride, more aptly described as the carnal spirit and mind in sheep's clothing. The scribes and Pharisees were Antichrist in Jesus' day, confirmed by the fact that Jesus said their father was the devil. Now, let's go to the following. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Returning to the illustration, we see the time and times and half a time within the scope of the last days, where time is the day and night of Pentecost, times is the day and night of trumpets and atonement, and half a time is the 7th branch or day or Feast of Tabernacles. Viewed this way, time is 1 day and night, times is 2 days and nights, and half a time is the 4th day or end of the process. Remember, no night follows the final branch, so this 4th day denotes a half or dividing of time. This division is seen as the oil and wine in the 3rd seal. Daniel 7:25 and Revelation 12:14 correlate perfectly with the 3rd and 4th seals of Revelation. A half or dividing of time. When the 7th seal is opened, we read, "There was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." Half an hour is half a time, is it not? Since this is the 7th seal, might this correspond to the 7th branch of the lampstand? I believe it does. In fact, if my understanding is correct, all the 7s in Revelation fall under the same umbrella, which is the 7th Spirit of God, or righteous judgment. What does 7 signify? The end of the cycle of sowing and reaping, from the seed to the ripened fruit. The 7th branch, then, is the harvest, as noted on the illustration. And, dear brother and sister, harvest is judgment, for it involves a separation of the good fruit from the bad. No, not us from them, but the old self from the new self. That's it for this study, but be sure to join me in the next as we continue our look into the last days. May God bless you in your walk with Him.